Okay, and we are back. Hello, hello. Yeah, we are back here for studio demo. Welcome to the folks who are here with us at 180 Maiden Lane. Welcome to the folks on the live stream. My name is Indigo Sparks, and Studio Demo is a broadcast hub featuring New Ink's wider creative community where conversations, demonstrations, and creative exchanges happen live. Up next, Resilient Futures is an honest conversation on the intersectional nature of climate action and disability justice. What role do artists and creative practitioners play in climate and sustainability work, and how can we all help shape the world that future generations will inherit from us? This talk is led by Jezz Chung, a multidisciplinary artist whose work explores personal and collective change through the lens of race, gender, trauma, disability, and neurodivergence. They've been recognized internationally by Vogue, Teen Vogue, Logo TV, and Made of Millions. You can listen to their podcast with Deem Journal titled Dreaming Different, and read their debut collection of poetry, prose, and practices titled The Way to Change, A Gentle Guide to Personal Transformation and Collective Liberation. Jezz is joined by Daphne Frias, a 27-year-old unapologetic Latina, disability rights and environmental justice advocate, living with cerebral palsy and using a wheelchair. She champions inclusivity across social movements. As the former New York State Director for March for Our Lives, Daphne helped pass over 15 state laws combating gun violence. She was a spokesperson for the 2019 Global Climate Strikes and a panelist at the New York Times Climate Hub with Emma Watson, in addition to charting the 2025 Forbes 30 Under 30 North America list for social impact. Daphne's work has been featured in the New York Times, the Washington Post, and NPR. You can learn more about these two incredible speakers at demofestival.org, but please help me welcoming them to the stage now.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to give Jezz a second to get settled. And I'm so excited to be here with you all. So, before we get into the chat, I just wanted to take a moment to really ground ourselves. I want you to close your eyes, take a deep breath with me, in, as deep as you can go, out. And as you're doing this, I want you to think about how your body feels in this space. How does your body feel in relation to the vibrations of our planet? How does our planet feel today to be going through a climate crisis? What is the grief that our planet holds? What is the anguish that our planet holds? What is the joy that our planet holds? Because grief and joy are not mutually exclusive things. They are on the other side of each other. Contextualize how you feel. How does it feel in your body? Where does it sit in your body? So now I'm going to ask you to open your eyes and think about what you want a better world to look like. A world free of the climate crisis, world free of systemic oppressions. I want you to hold that vision in your mind's eye as we go through this discussion. And if we have some time at the end, I want you guys to share back what that vision looks like. So, Jezz, let's take it forward.
Daphne, we are so lucky to learn from you, and that was so beautiful. I think we can't talk about anything without talking about the body, right? Yeah. And that was such a good practice to just tune in, which I feel like tuning in and listening is really some of the best practice of justice in general. Yeah. Climate justice, disability justice, racial justice. I feel like that is whenever I try to just describe what justice is to people who are really new, I just say, it's just listening. It's just listening to what's needed and following through. It's really as simple as that. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that.
Yeah.
But let's dive into it. When we got on our call, we were just kind of vibing and we went straight into it. So I want to thank all the organizers here for putting disability justice in your programming, because that's not always the case. Exactly. When we talk about social impact, often disabled people are forgotten, neurodivergent people are forgotten. So thank you for including us and putting us together. Yeah. And we want to try to make all of this stuff that feels so big and so just out of reach feel
tangible and
yes.
feel like you can actually connect to it. Because I think, we talk about this a lot, that all justice is disability justice. So whether we're talking about artistic expression, whether we're talking about, it's June, we're in Pride Month, whether we're talking about LGBTQIA plus individuals, whether we're talking about racial justice, whether we're talking about reproductive justice, disabled people fall into all of those categories. We are multiply oppressed people who come from all identities and all walks of life. So really, when we're talking about fighting for systemic oppression, we have to think about talking about disabled people and disabled futures.
Yes, and we're talking about imagination, to bring it back to what you said at the beginning, because how can we build if we can't imagine? And has everyone heard of Robin D.G. Kelly's Freedom Dreams and the practice of freedom dreaming? Yes? No? It's a practice where you just tune into what does it feel like to be free? What does freedom look like? What does freedom feel like? What does it taste like? What is the temperature? What's the sensation? And that is a way to kind of make it feel real in the moment, so we don't have to wait for someone else to come and save us or to change. We can actually, a lot of how I live is through Grace Lee Boggs' philosophy of transform yourself to transform the world.
Yes.
So, and I'm sure you've burnt out a lot during doing the work that you've done.
Yeah.
But talking about resilience, what does resilience mean to you in the context of climate action and disability justice? Or what does resilience mean to you right now, today?
I think resilience means two things. So subverting the idea of what capitalist productivity looks like. As a disabled individual, the way that my body can show up and be productive each day changes. So some days I'm going to have a lot of energy and some days I'm going to have very little energy, but that doesn't mean that my impact is lessened by the amount of productivity I can output. And I think that the way that we live currently is sort of biometric of how much we can produce. But I think being resilient is remembering that even if you produce one thing, it is as impactful as if you produce many things. And I also think that going back to the topic of imagination, we have to decolonize what it means to imagine. A lot of our oppressive systems have taken away our ability to imagine, especially in marginalized and oppressed communities, communities of color, queer communities, because they know that when we imagine, we can imagine liberation. So by taking our imaginative abilities away, it takes away our ability to imagine a liberated future. So reclaiming that and taking that back and saying, no, I'm going to imagine my wildest dream so that I can imagine what a future for me and my community looks like is so important, and one of the key testaments to resilience, to not let yourself be sort of captured and held down by what a limited view of productivity looks like. Because right now, the way that we define productivity, success, etc., is mainly from a able-bodied white framework that doesn't actually include the most marginalized communities. So we have to really make sure that when we're talking about resilience, those who are at the forefront are actually the ones who've experienced the most oppression.
All of that. One of the biggest symptoms of systemic oppression is a suppression of our imagination. Mm-hmm. And as artists, our power is our imagination. Yeah. That is a way to feel empowered when we feel so disempowered by the world. And it also makes me think of something I think about a lot in terms of disability justice and how it can show up every day is a sense of autonomy.
Yeah.
Because often disabled and neurodivergent people are infantilized, deemed incompetent, or presume that we're incompetent.
Yeah.
And so many other layers and layers of just things that happen every day, microaggressions. But when I think about disability justice in day-to-day, I think of consent, agency, and choice.
Yes.
And how whenever I feel disempowered by the world and I feel isolated and lonely and like overwhelmed, I just think, how can I have more autonomy in this situation? How can I give myself more choice? How can I give myself more agency? How can I give myself more consent, permission to focus on that, and permission to say, actually, what I'm doing is enough. Yeah. So I really like that. All of that sounds so empowering.
Not waiting for permission, actually giving yourself the permission to feel it and embody it. And I think when you talk about autonomy, and sort of like owning the narrative around who we are. I think that that's why like art and expression is so important, especially when we talk about like the intersection of climate conversations and disability. I think a lot of the conversations we have around climate and disability villainize disabled communities and villainize disabled people. I think about the way we talk about, you know, single-use plastic. There are many disabled people, myself included, who depend on plastic straws, single-use plastic medical devices to live and thrive and succeed. And just because we have to use those things doesn't mean that we don't care about our planet. And it also distracts us from the real proponents of this crisis, the fossil fuel industry, and the other oppressive systems that have led this crisis to exist in the first place. So I think about when we talk about autonomy, we have to talk about the narratives that are being shaped around that, and are the narratives that are being shaped this way with a very specific agenda to remove certain oppressed communities away from the conversation. And I think that that's why like art is so important in this medium, because a lot of times individuals, especially disabled individuals, are experiencing levels of oppression but don't have the words to describe what they're experiencing, because we've been systematically gatekept from higher levels of education, higher learning institutions, et cetera, so we may not have all of the jargon and all of the academic language to describe what we're experiencing, but we have art and other forms of expression to still have our words and have our experiences be put out there.
That makes me think also imagination and also curiosity is kind of this cycle and circle, and it is this process of just getting curious and using that to help. There's this disabled scholar named Josh Halstead who said, the questions we ask become the stars we follow.
Yeah.
And so we were talking earlier about it's not having the answers, it's about asking different questions and then being in conversation with each other, because disabled people, we are so isolated, or society isolates us.
Yeah.
And I'm also trying to change the language and like, am I disabled or is society disabling me?
Yeah.
Am I, you know, like it's, who does the onus fall on in terms of, is anyone familiar with the social versus medical model of disability? The social model of disability is kind of how we see it, like this person is disabled, and we kind of put it on the individual, and then the social model of disability is more, well, whose fault is it that people are disabled? It's the structures that we live in. It's a society. And what you said, because the climate is in the state that it is, it's disabling us. This is a disabling event,
Yeah.
right?
It is a disabling event, but it also, our planet itself is currently disabled. We have to think about the way that we are continuing to extract and continuing to disengage in an earnest way with our planet. And I think that we have to reckon with the fact that the fear around disability isn't the fear of losing our bodily functions, but it's the fear of being otherized. Knowing that once you are labeled under the category of being disabled, you lose your social status as what it means to be an able-bodied individual. And with the loss of that social status means you lose your societal protections that come from being or looking visibly able-bodied, right? And I think that same otherization is happening to our planet, because we understand that our planet is becoming and is currently disabled. We have moved from a narrative of collective care to, well, if this is not happening to me in this current moment, I can ignore it, right? But just 2 days ago, we had hazy skies once again from the Canada wildfires. Last year, we all remember waking up and having our skies look like Mars because the wildfires were happening in Canada once again. So you have to ask ourselves, why do we have to wait to see the impacts to actually do something about what's going on? Similarly to how things are happening in Palestine with the genocide, why do we have to see this trauma to feel called to action to do something about it? We have to ask ourselves, why do disabled bodies have to be put on the line in order for us to feel like this is something that matters to us? Because the truth is, as Jezz and I have been talking about, disability is inevitable. It is a natural part of human aging. It is a natural part of human existence. And I think that there's this misconception that disability either happens through something traumatic at birth or happens through some sort of incident or accident. But truly, the human aging process is a natural process of being disabled. And the more that we come to terms with our body aging and our body changing, the more we can accept it now, the easier it'll be when that time inevitably comes.
That brings me to our next topic of interconnectedness and interdependence. Who in here currently identifies as disabled or are curious about it and thinking, maybe I am disabled? Okay, a few. What about neurodivergent? Do you identify as neurodivergent or you're like, maybe I am neurodivergent? Okay, a few. So this idea that, to build on what you're saying, this idea that, oh yeah, disability justice is over here, disabled people are over here. Everyone in this room is going to be disabled, whether by an illness, an accident, injury, or by age, or by the planet. So when we think about this thing that I think even before I became versed in disability justice and before I read like Sins Invalid's 10 Principles of Disability Justice, before I read Alice Wong's book and all that, I thought, oh, it's something that I should learn about, but I'm going to learn about it to be a better ally or like something that I just want to be informed about. But the more I read, I thought, wait, I've been disabled my whole life and I didn't have the language because there was nobody around me who was a proud disabled person who was informed in these things, who could teach me about these things. But it really comes down to the sense of when I am taking care of my body, I'm also taking care of your body. When you're doing that, you're taking care of me too, because our safety is interconnected. Exactly. I am as safe as you are. I am as safe as Palestinians are in Gaza. So there's this sense of what I think, going back to your grounding ritual, if we tune into that, you can feel it. I feel it all the time.
Exactly.
That's why even if I'm totally off social media and I think I'm not going to tune into it, my body feels it.
Exactly. When the wildfires were raging earlier this year in LA, like I was sitting in my bed crying because it was just like, how do you not feel the immense grief of what's happening to our planet? When I see images of genocide all over the world in Sudan, in Haiti, in Palestine, etc., that breaks my heart because it may not be happening to my physical body, but it's happening to the energetic force field that we all feel as human beings. And we must ask ourselves, how do we tap into that energy and how do we create a system of collective care? And I think we're having a lot of interesting discussions right now of like, well, what does climate justice have to do with a genocide? Or what does climate justice have to do with reproductive justice, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? All of these oppressions come from the same systemic oppressive source, right? And we have to talk about how war, how infrastructure decline, how all of those things contribute to the proliferating crisis that's happening on our planet in terms of our planetary health. And I often say that the health of our planet is the health of our people. We cannot separate what's happening to our planet's health to the health of our people. And that's how we can contextualize that the climate crisis is the disabling event. We talk about climate refugees, people who are having to leave their homes due to natural disasters, due to extreme weather events, people here in New York City, as our pollution continues to rise, as we experience extreme heat. Disabled people systemically live in poverty, so having to pay for your higher air conditioning bills, having to pay for transportation to go to cooling centers, having to find ways to mitigate these changing weather patterns are basically impossible because we have been systemically otherized and categorized without having the support that we need to actually mitigate these things. And thinking about kind of what you said, I really encourage everyone to learn about what it really means to be disabled, learn about the ways we discuss disability, because you'd be a lot more surprised to think that you actually fit into this model of disability than most people think that they do.
And I also urge people to think about everyday ableism because it comes up, internalized and external ableism, even in our language, like turning a blind eye or deaf ears. Those phrases never sat well with me, and the more that I kind of realized why that is, I realized, oh, we should just, every time we say that, we're saying, oh, don't be disabled. Oh, that's the worst thing that can happen. And then it perpetuates this idea that it's a bad thing to be disabled, when we were talking about, I love the way my brain works. My brain, with being autistic and ADHD and everything else that's going on in there, helps me make connections, helps me see things, helps me empathize in a way that I might not be able to otherwise. Yeah. And it also, I really believe in disabled wisdom.
I agree. I think the way that my body shows up is perfectly the way it's supposed to, and I don't feel the need to change it. And I've been having a lot of discussions as sort of we're like on this frontier of AI, and a lot of people are talking about, well, how can AI help disabled people, and maybe we can create technology that reverses disabilities, et cetera, et cetera. And my thing is like, the amount of capital that we're putting into investing in these technologies, why don't we actually invest in creating models and structures that allow disabled people to thrive as they currently are, instead of forcing us to change our bodies because disability is so unappetizing to the general society. I also think that disabled people are some of the most astute climate solutionists and solutionists in general. We've constantly have had to live in a world that is not made for our bodies to thrive and succeed. If you think about a tenet of climate justice is adaptation. There is no more adaptive community than disabled people, because every single day we're constantly having to make multiple decisions on how to thrive and survive. And it's really about having not just seats at the table, but rooms full of us, and having these discussions be centered around our communities, because we have the tools and solutions. I think a lot, the misconception is like we're trying to pull climate solutions out of thin air. No, our indigenous communities, our oppressed communities have had already these solutions for decades. We just actually have to invest in those solutions, invest in our disabled communities, invest in our marginalized communities to come and bring those solutions to the forefront.
Yes, I agree. Take all that capital and just fund disabled artists, fund disabled initiatives, fund disabled thinkers. We need all of that, because the ways that though art is the way that we understand other people's experiences, and the way that we tune back into ourselves, because art elicits emotions in us. So all of that. So in this last 5 minutes, let's talk about joy, but informed joy.
Yeah.
Not bypassing joy. I'm talking about disabled joy. Just like we've been talking about disabled wisdom. And when I think about disabled joy, I think about envisioning, imagining connectedness. I think about a world where I feel like one of my biggest complaints in life has been loneliness. Like, I've just been lonely for as long as I can remember, and I still am all the time. And so what's so frustrating about that is now, with the information I have, I know why I'm lonely. It's because of racism, it's because of capitalism, it's because of ableism, it's because of all the isms. It's intentional, right? So I'm like, wait a minute, that's why it's so, it is radical for us to stay connected and have these conversations. But when I think of joy, what are the things that bring you disabled joy specifically, or joy in general? And also, what does a future of disability and climate justice look like? What does a future of collective care look like? Like, let's build that vision out for a second.
I think so, two things that bring me joy or disabled joy is the way that we care and continue to take care of each other. There is a collective sort of sharing culture that happens where we share medicine, we share mobility devices, we share recommendations to doctors who are not going to gaslight us, we share recommendations for accessible locations and accessible places. I think a lot of people don't realize how much like economic capital disabled people actually bring. Like, if I find a place that I really want to go to and they happen to not be accessible, I'm going in my group chat of friends being like, guys, we're boycotting this place. Like, I'm not going here. And people don't realize that they've just lost hundreds, possibly thousands of customers just because you're not welcome to a community of people. And I think that joy and solidarity is so, so, so vital. I also think that something that brings me joy is being seen fully in my disabled body. A lot of times I'll be walking in the street and like parents will be with their kids and they'll see me rolling down the street and they'll pull their kids away and it's like, my disability is not contagious, you're gonna be fine. And I want your kids to ask me questions. I want them to interact with me and other disabled people, because the more they interact, the more that they dismantle their internalized ableism and the more they dismantle their externalized ableism. So the more that we can have those positive touch points of what it means to interact with disability, the more we can begin to change what disability culture actually looks like. And then in terms of what I imagine the future to look like is really talking about universal design. I think even this building is a great example of that, where, we're in a multi-use, mixed-use space, but still the entire space is made with accessibility in mind. And building a future that's resilient, that doesn't see accessibility as an afterthought. I think so many people don't realize accessible models they use every day. Curb cuts, elevators, automatic doors. How many times have you guys seen push buttons on doors and you press them because you have a bag full of groceries in your hand and you just need an extra hand with the door? We all benefit from accessible design, and it's really about, I sort of urge you to go out and think about your daily routine. Where do you do laundry? Where do you get coffee? Where are your third spaces? How many of those same spaces could you still go to if tomorrow you became disabled? Think about how the infrastructures around you would change and how your access would change. Are we only fighting for a world that's made for our body to thrive, or are we fighting for a world that's made for everybody to thrive?
I love that solidarity is joy, and I love that gentle advocacy. Like, really see yourself. It goes back to the interconnectedness. See someone else's comfort, safety, belonging, inclusion as yours too.
Exactly.
Yeah, because it gets really tiring advocating for ourselves all the time. I feel like every disabled person I know is tired.
And we have to be the experts of our body and the experts of our experience. And sometimes you don't want to be. You just want to be seen and validated as you are.
Exactly. I will leave you with one more resource that's coming to mind. This incredible artist, Kevin Gotkin, an artist and scholar, Kevin Gotkin runs a newsletter called Crip News. So Crip News, you can subscribe to that. And Kevin was also on an episode of Dreaming Different, the podcast I have about building a future that is neurodivergent friendly. So those are some resources. Do you have any other resources you would like to share?
I think really it's about, I urge you to become better listeners. Learn when you need to speak and learn when to be silent. Change doesn't have to be loud. Change can also happen in silence. So learn what the difference is and learn which one is more powerful and when to utilize which, because so many times disabled people are spoken over, are silenced, and we're just waiting for someone to give us the mic. And maybe that can be you. So thank you so much for listening, and I'm so happy to have done this.
Thank you, everyone.
Can give them another round of applause. Yes, such important work. Thank you both so much.